There is a rare and powerful force in this world, the woman who trusts God. She carries a spirit unlike any other, because her foundation is not built on shifting sands, but on the unshakable rock of divine assurance. When a woman truly trusts God, she walks through life as if nothing bothers her. Not because her life is free from challenges, but because her faith shields her heart from the turmoil that seeks to disturb her peace. You see, trust in God cultivates an inner peace that cannot be disturbed by circumstance. Storms may rage, voices may shout, and the world may crumble around her, but within her there is a calmness that defies explanation. This is not the peace the world offers, temporary, conditional, fragile. No, this is the peace that surpasses understanding. It flows from a deep well of confidence in God's promises, His perfect timing, and His sovereign hand. When trouble comes, she does not waste her energy reacting with fear or frustration. Instead, she acts with a quiet strength because she knows who she is and whose she is. She knows her identity is not defined by her problems, but by her purpose, and that purpose is rooted in God's plan for her life. This divine clarity allows her to walk boldly, knowing that the trials she faces are mere stepping stones to her destiny. Her trust is not passive. It is active and courageous. It empowers her to keep moving forward even when the path is unclear. She chooses grace over anger, hope over despair, and action over paralysis. Her demeanor speaks volumes. Calm, composed, unwavering. She embodies the truth that when God is with you, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Such a woman becomes a beacon, a living testimony of what it means to surrender fully to God. Others see her, and they are drawn to her peace. They wonder how she remains unshaken in the face of adversity. The answer is simple. She trusts God with all her heart, leaning not on her own understanding, but acknowledging Him in all her ways. Let this be a reminder to every woman who hears these words today. Your peace is your power. When you trust God deeply, you act like nothing bothers you. Not because you ignore reality, but because your spirit is anchored in a greater reality. You walk with the confidence of a queen who knows her kingdom is secure, no matter what storms blow outside her walls. Trust in God is the source of a profound inner peace that goes far beyond what the world can offer. When a person places their confidence fully in the Creator, they tap into a wellspring of calm that is not dependent on the conditions around them. External circumstances, whether they be hardship, loss, confusion, or conflict, may attempt to unsettle the heart and disturb the mind, but they cannot penetrate the peace that is rooted in divine trust. This peace is not merely the absence of trouble or the temporary relief of anxiety. It is a deep, unshakable tranquility that remains steady even when everything seems to be falling apart. This peace comes from the understanding that God is sovereign over all things, that He is in control of the seen and the unseen, and that His plans for us are good and purposeful. When trust is placed in God, the believer no longer feels the need to control every situation or fear the unknown, because they recognize that God's wisdom and power far exceed their own. This shifts the perspective from one of anxiety and uncertainty to one of confidence and assurance. Challenges become opportunities to experience God's faithfulness and strength rather than causes for despair. Moreover, trust in God reshapes how a person responds to pressure and adversity. Instead of reacting impulsively or being overwhelmed by fear, the heart anchored in divine trust can remain composed, hopeful, and resilient. It is this kind of peace that Paul described when he said, "The peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds." It is a supernatural calm that does not depend on the absence of storms, but on the presence of the Almighty. His peace guards the heart from anxiety and fills the spirit with hope, allowing the individual to live with confidence, knowing that no matter what happens, God's grace and love will sustain them. True faith is like an unmovable anchor in the midst of life's storms. It produces a calmness that cannot be shaken by trials or opposition because it is grounded in a deep conviction that God is faithful, powerful, and always present. When a woman truly believes in God's promises, her faith becomes a shield that protects her heart from fear, doubt, and anxiety. It does not mean she is unaware of difficulties or unaffected by pain, but rather that her spirit remains steady and composed despite them. This calmness arises because true faith is not dependent on circumstances or human understanding. It rests firmly on the character of God. When challenges come, instead of panic or despair, faith leads to a quiet assurance that God is working behind the scenes for her good. She understands that every trial is temporary and opposition is only a test that will ultimately strengthen her. This knowledge transforms her response. She does not waste energy on worry or anger, but moves forward with confidence and peace. In opposition, faith becomes a source of courage. It silences the voices of fear and criticism, reminding her that God's power is greater than any obstacle she faces. She stands firm like a tree planted by the water, unshaken by the winds. This peace in faith is a testimony to others, showing that a life anchored in God's truth is not controlled by external turmoil, but by the steady, calming presence of the divine. True faith produces a calmness that not even the fiercest storm can disturb, because it trusts in a God who is greater than every trial and every enemy. The woman who trusts God carries a profound understanding of her identity and purpose that rises far above the chaos surrounding her. She knows that her worth is not defined by the noise of the world, the opinions of others, or the trials she faces. Instead, she is rooted deeply in the truth of who God created her to be, fearfully and wonderfully made, chosen and loved. This awareness gives her a clarity of vision that no distraction or difficulty can cloud. Because she understands her divine identity, she refuses to be swayed or shaken by the confusion and disorder that often invade life. The storms of disappointment, criticism, or hardship may rage all around her, but they cannot touch the certainty she has about her purpose. She walks with the confidence that her life is part of a greater plan, one that God Himself has designed with intention and meaning. This purpose is not something she stumbled upon by accident. It is a calling planted in her heart from the very beginning. Her understanding of identity and purpose empowers her to rise above circumstances. When the world tries to label her by her failures or limitations, she looks beyond and remembers the promise that she is made for greatness, for impact, and for legacy. Her trust in God allows her to focus not on what is temporary or chaotic, but on the eternal and purposeful mission set before her. This perspective fuels her resilience and determination, enabling her to walk through life with grace and boldness, knowing she is anchored in a destiny that no storm can derail. Our confidence springs from a foundation far deeper and firmer than the fleeting opinions of people or the unpredictable results of her efforts. It is rooted in the divine promises God has spoken over her life, promises that are unchanging, eternal, and trustworthy. Unlike human approval, which can be fickle and conditional, the promises of God remain steadfast through every season, every circumstance, and every trial. This divine assurance gives her a boldness that cannot be undermined by rejection, criticism, or failure. She understands that true confidence is not about impressing others or gaining their validation. It is about standing firm on the Word of God, knowing that His plans for her are to prosper her, to give her hope, and to establish her in purpose. When outcomes fall short of her expectations or when doors seem to close, she does not waver because her confidence does not depend on external success, but on the certainty of God's faithfulness. She knows that what God has promised will come to pass even if it is not immediate or visible. This rooted confidence shapes how she moves through life. She walks with dignity and peace, unshaken by the praise or rejection of those around her. Her trust is not in circumstances, but in the character of God who never fails. This divine confidence empowers her to take risks, face challenges, and pursue her calling without fear, because she is anchored in the unbreakable promises of a faithful God, not in the fragile approval of humanity. She moves with a quiet grace and unwavering strength because she has learned to trust in God's perfect timing. She understands that life does not always unfold according to her own schedule or desires, but she rests confidently in the truth that God's timing is never late and never early. It is always exactly right. This knowledge frees her from impatience, anxiety, and frustration. Instead of rushing ahead or giving up when things seem delayed, she walks steadily forward with faith, knowing that every season has its purpose. Her grace is seen in how she handles waiting, not with bitterness or despair, but with patience and hope. She carries herself with dignity, refusing to be hurried or pressured by the demands of the world or the expectations of others. She knows that rushing God's plan only leads to unnecessary mistakes or missed blessings. So she remains calm and composed, trusting that the divine clock is ticking in her favor. Her strength is quiet but unbreakable. It comes from the deep assurance that every delay is a divine setup for something greater. She moves forward with confidence, not by forcing outcomes, but by aligning her heart with God's will and timing. This strength allows her to endure hardship, overcome discouragement, and keep pursuing her purpose even when answers seem slow to come. In all things, she demonstrates that trusting God's timing is an act of wisdom and surrender. It is the secret to moving through life with both grace and power, confident that when the time is right, everything will come together perfectly according to God's plan. Her actions are the natural expression of a heart fully surrendered to God. This surrender is not passive or weak, rather it is the source of her resilience and unwavering hope, because she has laid down her own plans, desires, and fears at the feet of the Almighty. She moves through life with a strength that cannot be shaken. Her choices are no longer dictated by anxiety or the pressure to control outcomes, but by a deep trust that God is working all things together for her good. In surrender, she finds freedom, a freedom that empowers her to rise each time she falls, to persevere when the road is difficult, and to keep hope alive even in the darkest moments. This resilience is a reflection of her belief that setbacks are not the end, but stepping stones to greater things. She understands that every challenge is an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, and closer to God. Because her hope is anchored in the eternal promises of God. It does not waver when circumstances change or when people disappoint. Her actions speak louder than words. They reveal a life lived with intentional faith. When others might crumble under pressure, she stands firm, demonstrating that surrender to God is not surrender to defeat, but surrender to divine strength. Her hope shines as a beacon, inspiring those around her to trust in God's faithfulness. Through her surrendered heart, she embodies the truth that true power and resilience come from yielding fully to God's will and holding fast to hope no matter what. She becomes a radiant beacon of hope and stability in a world often marked by uncertainty and turmoil. Her unwavering trust in God shines through every challenge, casting light into the darkness, not only for herself, but for those around her. Because her foundation is firmly rooted in faith, she stands tall and steady when others are shaken, offering a living example of what it means to rely fully on God's grace and provision. Her life becomes a testimony that faith is not just about words, but about action. How one responds in the face of adversity, others see in her the peace and confidence that comes from trusting God's sovereignty, and they are drawn to that strength. She inspires those who are weary, encouraging them to hold fast even when the journey is difficult. Her calm in the storm becomes a source of comfort and encouragement, reminding everyone that God's presence is greater than any problem. Because she embodies stability amid chaos, people look to her as a model of resilience and hope. She teaches, often without speaking, that trusting God is the pathway to enduring peace and victory. Her example challenges others to shift their focus from fear and doubt to faith and trust. In this way, she fulfills a higher purpose. She becomes a vessel through which God's light reaches others, transforming despair into hope, confusion into clarity, and weakness into strength. Through her unwavering trust, she not only survives adversity, but helps others rise above it, becoming a beacon that guides many toward the assurance of God's unfailing love. Remember, the woman who trusts God is not defined by the storms she faces, but by the peace she carries within. Her strength, her grace, her unwavering hope all flow from a heart fully surrendered to the one who holds the universe. When you choose to trust God completely, you rise above every challenge, walking with a confidence that nothing can shake. Let this truth settle deep within you. No matter what comes your way, God's promises are your firm foundation. Stand tall, move forward with boldness, and live as the unshakable woman who acts like nothing bothers her, because with God, nothing ever truly can.